But now that we're in the post-COVID era, back into sort of everything's back up and open, and folks are congregating again. There's been a real drive around live meetings and live interactions and getting back to the basics of that human connection.
Yes.
And I'm curious to get your perspective on this, Bill, because we've even gone so far as to introduce that as a KPI in the scorecard.
Oh, great.
And the reason being is not so much because we have a couple of folks on the team who do exceptionally well, even in the absence of that.
Yeah.
But more and more data is supporting the fact that the more time you have with customers, the gap between really high performance year versus good years or mediocre years.
Well, welcome to Sales Excellence Leadership Insights. My name is Bill Stinnett, and I'm thrilled today to be here with my old friend. We're not that old, Mark, but let's say longtime friend, Mark McCarthy.
It's a pleasure to be here, Bill. Thank you.
I appreciate you coming on the show. So, Mark, I want to talk about in this episode, if it's okay with you, a little bit about metrics and KPIs that sales leaders can use to help manage their organization. I know you're Senior Vice President of Sales, right?
Yep, that's
right.
right.
ReachMD.
Yep.
You're overseeing a sales team. So let's talk about some of the different tools that you're using to collect data, and then how you're using this data in terms of measures and metrics, KPIs, et cetera, day to day to better manage your sales team. So let's just take off on this and see where the conversation goes.
Okay. So you're starting with sort of the end in mind, right? So what are the outcomes we want to see at the end? Let's suppose it's growth goal in terms of new sales.
Okay.
And also for our business, a renewal aspect as well.
Renewals,
Right.
yes.
So the expression that the first sale is the toughest, because once you make that first sale, you should be in a position to be able to expand the business over time if you're doing your job properly.
Yeah.
So there's a renewal component in there too.
Yep.
And then you sort of back into the KPIs that matter based on that. And so a couple of the key metrics that we look at ReachMD, and again, this is probably not a surprise for other leaders.
Yep.
Growth in the pipeline.
Yep.
The velocity of opportunities through the pipeline.
Velocity. Talk about that a second. What are you talking about?
So how quickly can you move opportunities through the pipeline?
From identification to close.
To close,
Yep.
right.
And so you're measuring this in number of days, for example.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Aging, I think I've heard some people call
That's another
it.
way
Yep.
to think about it too.
Okay.
Yeah. And over time, that gives you a window into what does your average sales cycle look like. And so you can have better prediction around X numbers of opportunities at the top of the funnel. If it takes an average of, let's say, 3.5 months, then you get an idea of where you're going to be at the quarter and at the year.
Yep.
And then also the level with which you can replenish those opportunities at the top of the funnel, because the double-edged sword of sales is in as much as you're closing, you also have to be replenishing the pipeline at the same time.
Yes,
right?
right. So one of my clients, I was working on a project a few years ago, and I introduced this measure for them that was really changed their business. We called it funnel refill rate. So to your exact point, at the end of each month, you're closing some won, you're closing some lost, and some are just falling out of the pipeline for various reasons, get disqualified, or who knows, they went out of business, what have you. So we look at how much is coming out of the funnel on a monthly basis, and then we have to be refilling the funnel at least that much, if not more, so that we've got stuff to close next month. And if we're expecting to grow, let's say over the next year, almost everybody in your seat is going to be sitting there at the early part of the year thinking, I've got a big goal at the end of the year.
Right.
We have to do more now so that we can close more in the future.
That's right. Yeah.
So how do you really manage this and kind of drive behavior around this idea of refilling the funnel as you go? Give me some suggestions there.
It's it's an age-old challenge and opportunity in sales, right?
Yeah.
It's how do you continue to replenish that pipeline?
Yeah.
And the business we're in, which is education promotion within life sciences,
Okay.
so pharma, biotech, med device.
Yeah.
There is a level of seasonality to it.
Okay.
Right? So there's buying peaks in the course of the year,
Okay.
as well as there are opportunities when a product is coming to market, and that also is identified in terms of timing.
Yep.
So you want to be able to plug into the seasonality as well as those other compelling events, when these things are going to be happening, and be connected to that. those are the ways by which you can start to replenish the pipeline by understanding where your customers are in their various cycles and really be connected to them on that.
So one thing I've noticed is that because of certain seasonality or artificial seasonality, which means our own fiscal calendar, the end of the quarter, the end of the year, salespeople are so focused on closing business that there's that seasonality aspect. It's easy to take your foot off the gas of prospecting and funnel building during those times when you're focused on closing business. But I've found that that's probably the time you need to make sure you don't throw it into neutral and just coast, because after the end of the year, you roll out to January or whenever your year starts again, and your pipeline's empty at that point.
So we have a couple of things that we do at ReachMD. One is every week we have a very, very clear team and individual scorecard that tells us where we are with respect to all of those KPIs.
Nice.
We also, the team are just a phenomenal group of people. And I've been doing this long enough to understand that in the absence of some level of regular prospecting, the pipeline gets diminished and you find yourself really up against the wall.
Yes.
That plus incentives that we can put together at different times of the year to really drive more of those behaviors.
Okay.
Really helps to alleviate a lot of that. But it helps when you work with professionals who are ambitious. They want to be successful.
Right.
They want to make money. And they know that if I don't do the work to be able to rebuild the pipeline, I'm really going to be in a tough spot. And so they have enough experience and we have enough data to support with these different actions, you'll be successful. In the absence of these actions, you won't. But then it's critically important to be able to look at this on a daily, weekly, monthly basis and have it very, very clear around expectations and performance against those expectations.
This is so good. So you said a scorecard. This is something that we've done with quite a few of our clients over the years. And on this scorecard, certainly we're going to measure activities. How many people did you reach out to, or how many did you actually reach and connect with? How many opportunities did that create? How many of those opportunities found their way to the proposal stage and then closed, et cetera? So we're counting for activity, but what I've always believed is that what's just as important as activity in each stage of the things we do to try to sell is the conversion rate from one to the next. Because if you have someone converting, let's just use an average number here, 3 to 1. It takes 3 of these to get one of those, 3 of these to get one of those. You're going to come up with a certain mathematics. But you have somebody different who's converting, let's say, 4 to 1. It takes them 4 conversations to find a new opportunity, 4 new opportunities to find one that we reach as the proposal stage. Just that working on conversion rates can really change the math we've found.
Totally. There's the quality aspect, right? Because you can be busy, but busy without the quality is not going to yield the results that you need. And those conversion rates too, it's interesting, you may see nuances across individual sellers in addition to across different teams. Why is that? And so being able to understand what those differences are, and is it a sales training gap? Is it a territory issue, product deficiency? What's causing the disparity in some of those conversion rates? All things that are manageable and are solvable as long as you can identify them early enough. And that level of data-driven scorecard and reporting is really the key to be able to get to that.
So I think that most of the people that I would work with, I come in to do a training workshop and you got a room full of people. Just about anybody that's in sales is a fairly driven person. I mean, you better be driven in this profession, otherwise it'll eat you up and spit you out, right?
Totally,
So I think that most everybody would love to get better at something, but it's not always obvious what I need to get better at. So when you kind of measure these conversion rates then as a leader, or even as an individual, if I look at my own scorecard, I can see where there are areas of opportunity for improvement. And so we'll often take this scorecard, these metrics across a sales team, and we can kind of stack rank them, if you will, not as a means to embarrass people or shame them in any way. But if we look at what are the best converters doing at stage 2 to 3, how are they turning this first conversation into a proposal stage, and start to look at the behaviors and some of the things that they're doing in that process, then we can replicate that across the rest of the group. And I'll give an example. First meeting, to we put together a proposal. That one is often driven by, in many cases, meeting more people in the customer's organization.
Yeah.
So you see your very best salespeople are doing that. They're spending that extra effort to not only attempt to meet more people themselves, but bringing in people from their team to reach this, I call it the many-to-many touch points between these two organizations. They're seeing much higher conversion rates, and so we can observe those behaviors so we can replicate this training and coaching across the team, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I mean, it's such a great thing. And those are the areas for that sort of improvement that will benefit the rest of the organization by identifying those gaps or strengths in other areas that you can then apply to make everybody else stronger.
Yeah.
You're also hitting on something really interesting, which is emblematic of the post-COVID era.
Okay.
Right? So we went through a couple of years, we're all locked up at home, and still managed to sell and grow successfully. Coming out of that and back into post-COVID, not back into, but now that we're in the post-COVID era, back into sort of everything's back up and open and folks are congregating again. There's been a real drive around live meetings and live interactions and getting back to the basics of that human connection.
Yes.
And I'm curious to get your perspective on this, Bill, because we've even gone so far as to introduce that as a KPI in the scorecard.
Oh, great.
And the reason being is not so much because we have a couple of folks on the team who do exceptionally well, even in the absence of that.
Yeah.
Other folks who maybe even with lots and lots of that social time with customers still doing okay. So there's still some variances, but more and more data is supporting the fact that the more time you have with customers, the gap between really high performance year versus good years or mediocre years.
Yeah.
Putting on the scorecard has allowed us to just drive sort of the intentionality of get out there and try and find ways to do it. It isn't, you got to do 2 a week or 10 a month or whatever that number is, at least not yet.
Yeah.
But it's more the intentionality. What are you saying on your side?
Oh, wow. So this is a really neat thing. So first of all, I believe that any aspect of sales behavior where performance is measured, performance improves. So I like what you said where it's not, you're required to do 3 face-to-face meetings a week. I find those kinds of edicts to be very ineffective. For one reason is that some people are so good that they could do 1 meeting a week and create a new opportunity or 2. Others might need to go do 5 meetings to create 1 new opportunity. So one size doesn't fit all. But that kind of ends up being the focus then, as we said here, on I have to check the box next to did I have a meeting, as opposed was the meeting effective. But I like what you're saying here because there's no substitute for seeing people face to face. And I'm teaching this to my daughter. She's still in high school, but as she kind of navigates the world, I keep telling her, if you want something in life, go see the face of somebody who can give it to you and ask them for it. And it's the same thing in sales. This is so true. But there's a trade-off, isn't there? There's a trade-off between I can stay in my home office and I could, let's say, have 10 meetings with customers versus I could get on an airplane, fly to Kansas City, and maybe have 1 meeting over 2 days period. And then at the end of the week, I've only got 6 instead of somebody else had 10.
Right.
But it sounds like you believe that face-to-face meeting or 2 or 3 a week yields such a high percentage of success that it's worth it.
It does. And it's that's the balance, right? Because yes, if you can jump on a Zoom or a Teams with somebody on Monday versus, well, let's get together 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, right.
Take the call on Monday and let's book something for 3 weeks.
Take both.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be either or. But yeah, if there's an opportunity to connect sooner, let's do it sooner. But again, it's more just the intentionality of let me think about ways to be able to find opportunities to connect with you in person. Can we grab a coffee together? Can we do a lunch? Or business, or sponsors work with healthcare providers. And so when there's large conferences that doctors and nurses go to, our sponsors go, so we go to those to meet our sponsors. So there's different venues where you can find those opportunities to connect. And again, most offices are back open and folks go in for live meetings. And it's interesting. You fall back into, how do we plug this thing in? How do we get it on the screen? Can you guys hear me on the phone? That's a level of familiarity again.
Old school problems.
Yeah, exactly. But finding those venues and just being, again, the intentionality of being creative to find an opportunity to meet with somebody is really the factor.
Yeah. I love to tell this story about in 15, I guess it was. I was just scrolling through LinkedIn one day. I was looking for another opportunity. And I thought, I'm just going to see who's doing what these days. Maybe I can find some old friends or something. And I came across a guy who I had known back in 2006. Find out now he's senior vice president of a very large company that we all know. And so I reached out to him on LinkedIn and said, hey, congratulations on your new role. He wrote back within an hour on LinkedIn and said, hey, Bill, listen, if you're ever going to be in New Jersey, let me know. We'll definitely want to catch up for dinner. So I typed back, you're never going to believe this. I'm going to be in New Jersey next week.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Here's my assistant's number. Let's book dinner. I can't wait to meet you. And after we scheduled the appointment, then I called United Airlines and said, listen, I need a ticket to New Jersey. But getting in front of people is so powerful. That led to a lot of business, by the way. Getting in front of people is so powerful that I think that we might have we've forgotten just how important it is. And honestly, air travel is not nearly as efficient as it once was. Flight delays and all the things that happen out there, but it's still worth doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really critically important. And it's gone back to being more normalized again in terms of getting together with people. So the expectation is there. And I think the appetite or receptivity on behalf of customers is there. They want to get together and they want to spend some time with you. So seek that out. It's going to be a really important factor.
That's a paradigm I think a lot of salespeople need to arrive at, which is people want to meet with them. Because there's another factor in today's world that I think is really, it's inhibiting a lot of our effectiveness in sales. And that is that people just don't respond to email and telephone calls the way they once did. But I think that to assume then that these people don't want anything to do with me is an oversimplification.
Totally,
Because it's maybe not that they have some personal grudge against you or that refuse to meet with you, but people are so busy they just don't respond to stuff the way that they used to, or they're checking their email while they're sitting in a meeting, and they don't really have the bandwidth to do the response at that time. That's why I think we have to reach out to people multiple times, but ask for an opportunity to speak. And of course, you and I know that there better be something in it for them too. It's not just, can I have some of your time to come and meet with you?
Here's why.
So I can check the box to make my boss happy. But here's what's in it for you if you were to spend a little bit of time for me. Okay. I feel like we got off topic, so let's go back a little bit to this KPIs piece here now. What are some of the other things, and I love this idea that you've added to the scorecard, what are some of the other things on the scorecard that help you to really have insight into how to help the people on your team to get better at what they do?
Now, on an individual basis, I do weekly one-on-ones, as I'm sure many folks do. And sometimes it's a little open-ended, right? It's a little open around what's on your mind. Just some open-ended questions to kind of get folks talking. Other times it's more specific to pipeline or specific deals that they're working on. But that data helps to inform some of the topics that we can cover on those one-on-ones to be able to really shore up those strengths and weaknesses. A
surprising number of sales leaders have lost that discipline of the regular weekly one-on-one conversations. They replace it in some cases with, like, say, a forecast call, where I'm going to have 7 or 14 or 21 salespeople on there to talk about what they're committing to close this month, thinking that that's a substitute or that's all we need to do in terms of touching the individual. And my belief is that if you let a salesperson just kind of run without any regular, consistent guidance and questions that pull them back to the priorities we want them to focus on, if we don't have that touch point to it, it's too easy for them to kind of get off track, even lose motivation, and get distracted with other non-sales things. Because here's something I heard years ago, is that what drives salesperson behavior more than any other thing is the questions their managers ask them.
Interesting,
And so those one-on-ones are that opportunity, aren't they?
They really are,
In fact, I got to offer one little suggestion. So I do a lot of teaching and training around this. One of the best questions you could ask someone, I think, a salesperson in one of those one-on-ones, is, what are you most excited about in your business this week? That emphasizes that it's their business, but also it helps them think about what am I looking forward to? Or maybe what's the best thing that happened in your business last week? give them a chance to brag a little bit and take ownership of things. So in terms of KPIs, though, specifically, any other thoughts about things that you would measure that might not be as obvious? And I'm wondering particularly, I want to hear your thoughts on this, wondering particularly around maybe deal size. Is that something that you guys look at to see how to maximize opportunities with certain clients?
It is. And so the average deal size over the course of the year, and because the comment you made at the beginning was, the start of the year, you're going to be tasked with growing your business yet again. And so what are the levers that are available to be able to do that? It's potentially more people. It is, maybe more product. But invariably, it's going to be finding ways to be able to increase the average deal size just by a little bit across the team will give you some really, really great growth, in addition to renewing existing business and then growing on top of that. So average deal size is also a really important KPI that we track. And
So we drive this usually in two ways, cross-selling or upselling. So cross-selling means, do you want fries with that, sir? Upselling means, would you like to biggie size that, sir? And of course, it's not as simplistic as selling French fries or a large Coke, obviously. In many cases, we have to do much more in the way of diagnostics, do some more education with the client, understanding kind of some of the other services or products that we offer. But I don't think we ever exhaust what a client could be doing in terms of business with us. I've never yet met a company or even individual sales guys that's captured 100% of the client's business. So there's always that opportunity to do more business. And that leads me to another metric I'm curious to know if you guys think about, which is, well, I call it account share. It could be called share of wallet, share of spend. But if you think about market share, what percentage of the market we have, I often think about account share. What percentage of the business that we could be doing with that account are we doing? Do you track that? And then how do you drive that?
So it is something that we review and we understand, not always memorialized as a KPI. But we would understand within a particular manufacturer how many brands and how many of those brands do we work with, and across the different teams within those brands. But it's a really interesting point. The share of wallet idea is something that we've sort of talked about and grappled with for a couple of years. Part of it is defining what is the size of the wallet to begin with.
Right. You got to have some knowledge of all the potential within the customer. And I always tell people the only person that knows the answer is the customer themselves. So you have to go talk to them and ask questions like, so what do you guys spend annually on X, Y, or Z? Or in addition to this kind of an investment, what else are you doing to educate your marketplace on the new drugs that are being released? That kind of thing. Those open-ended kind of probing questions that get people to talking, knowing full well that some are not going to disclose anything to you. But the ones that will give you an indication or an idea of what our share of that account might be, so we can talk about then how to capture some of the white space that's still available.
And it's interesting, going back to, again, maybe this was in 04 or 05 when we started working together for the first time. I was in a individual seller role, and I had one account in particular which they're beloved, still are beloved to me. And they were my poster child for, I'd gotten that first sale with that first brand. And on the base of that, it was been able to go to every other brand within the organization. Say, hey, we're now working with Brand X. Or Brand X did a review. They chose us as the partner for Y. Can we talk to you about why that is, how we work with you? So there's vast amounts of opportunity for expansion across other teams within the customer, as well as opportunities to be able to sell in more value based on where they've started. But you have to really understand as a seller, what are those areas of opportunity, what other avenues you can pursue, and how best to migrate into those other areas.
I can't resist, Mark. I got to do a little teaching, okay? Right, for our audience. I think it's going to be helpful. So one of the things that you might remember from my workshops is this idea of this little pie graph. The whole pie representing all of what a customer could be doing in terms of business with us. Then we would slice out what's our account share, and the balance would be then white space, potential business that we could capture. We'll probably never get to 100%. But then there are three kinds of business that we could think about, and I find it really helps salespeople to kind of define this and think about it in these ways. One is business that's very similar to what we've already done. So you're helping one brand in the following way. So now let's go to every other brand and see if we can help them in the same way. Another flavor number 2, would be kind of out-of-the-box solutions, providing services and technology that they're not buying from us today. So things like very unlike the current relationship or the current business, because it's funny how customers tend to put us in a box. I've had this happen so many times in my world, for example. I'll come in and do a prospecting workshop. Customer loved it. Fantastic. Great success, finding new business, this, that, and the other thing. I follow up with them some months later. How are things going? And they say, oh, yeah, Bill, doing really good. As a matter of fact, we had another company in here doing a negotiation workshop just last week. And I'm thinking, you didn't go to my website and discover that I also do negotiate? It wasn't their fault. It was my fault for not pursuing that as add-on additional business that's outside the box. Getting outside the box the customer sees us in, And then the third flavor on this, you might recall this too, I call it green space. So the white space is all the business that they could be doing based on what they're spending today. The green space would be expanding the pie into solutions and services and so forth that they're not buying from anybody today. So those kind of metrics and analyzing that kind of thing not only determines how we're doing now, but it drives our behavior in the future and drives our new questioning cycles and new engagement with other people in the organization. I just couldn't resist, Mark. I had to share that.
It's awesome. And this is why you are who you are. And let me ask you then, because it is a topic that comes up all the time, right? And there's times when you do one of these around, I can't believe that they don't know we do that as well.
Yes.
So the means by which you continue to socialize your different offerings. Any thoughts on what are the best ways to do that?
Well, I even heard in the story I just told, I said I follow up with them some months later. I bet one of the biggest mistakes we make, I'm sure we could track the data on this, one of the biggest mistakes we all tend to make is we make a sale. And we're so excited, and we throw it in the till, and we celebrate, and we go find the next customer. But that customer, even though we might have satisfied one need, has lots of other needs, lots of other goals to achieve. And so I would think that probably one of the things we could all do better is to stay engaged, continue to measure their progress on what we just provided. Now, in some cases, I guess a customer might say, I don't need you anymore. I don't want to talk to you right now. But if I am able to continue to keep that conversation going, the likelihood of finding the next need then it goes way up. And here's the way I do it in my business, and I learned this probably 10 or 12 years ago, is that instead of just doing a workshop and then waving goodbye, is that now we do some reinforcement and we're together with them on a monthly basis or even twice a month or whatever frequency it is to continue to help them to drive the thing forward. And almost invariably, we find the next need, the next help that they need, and then we're perfectly positioned to do that. So that's my best idea.
One of the other areas, and again, these now seem like very sort of simple common sense things, but at the time that you articulated this to us, it was like, oh my God, this is such a great idea. And of course, it's so obvious. One of your favorite foils was a guy named Clem. Right? So Clem is always the guy that he's in the way of everything. And your idea of contact diversity, right? So you have to know a lot more people within an organization besides just that one buyer, because if that buyer is Clem and he gets, God forbid, hit by a bus, or he moves to another organization, another brand, which happens all the time within our industry, then where do you go? Right? And so before that happens, build up that repertoire of different connections, and it also gives you the opportunity to be able to migrate into other opportunities through that. We also have the benefit, which was one of the other points you mentioned around how are we progressing towards goal, towards success. We can do that every month. Every month, at a minimum, is an opportunity to check back in and say, hey, good news, look how great it's going. By the way, who else within the organization would benefit from this? All
right, good. So that's selling across, like we talked about, for sure.
And then there's other aspects where it's, look how great this is going. Number one, look how smart you were to have made this investment.
You guys are brilliant. Congratulations. Yes.
Promotion is on its way. And number two is, based on this, there's a big appetite let's feed the appetite.
Yeah.
So that's starting to then sell up the in terms of both the budget as well as up that food chain.
Yeah.
There's other things you can set up on a quarterly basis as well.
Like a quarterly business review.
Exactly, So, it's... but it all has to be anchored around, as the customer, why would I do this? What's in it for me? What's the value for me?
Yep.
Otherwise, it's just one big commercial and nobody wants to sit through that every month.
Great point. So if we're not adding value in their world with a new way to measure things or a way to maximize the return on investment of what they already bought, it just sounds like we're pitching the next thing.
Yeah.
And we probably are. If we're not actually adding value and helping them derive value, we are pitching the next thing. But you mentioned something I can't resist once again, because we talked about a lot of different metrics here. We talked about number of deals in the pipeline, deal size, deal velocity, win rate, all of those things.
Yeah.
Those are the big measures. Number of deals, size of deals, velocity, and win rate. But also these other metrics like account share, and some others. I have found, been doing this 24 years, as you well know, worked with a lot of organizations, the number one thing that affects all of that, whether it's deal size, velocity, repeat business, account share, et cetera, is the number of key people you know in the customer's organization. It boils down to not just quantity, but quality of relationships. Yeah. And so that's probably, I think, the best way to continue to capture more of that business, more of the white space, is to always be expanding that relationship base.
Yeah.
All the way through a sales cycle beyond the purchase, and continuing to develop those touch points, I like to call them, between not just one salesperson, but everybody in the organization, continuing to build those relations. That's what creates that stickiness.
It does.
That leads to the repeat business. Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm saying that even with ReachMD, the more successful sellers over the last couple of years, their territory's actually gotten smaller.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Because they need fewer because they have so much more depth within the existing customer base.
Yeah.
The reason they have depth is, number one, what we do works very well. But number two, the sellers are really trusted by their customers.
Yep.
And because they're trusted, there's opportunities to talk about more needs, more challenges, more opportunities. Yeah. So that's an interesting thing. And it sort of is intuitive, right? As you continue to get more successful, it's going to be shrinking the territory, but going deeper, larger deal sizes. Yep. And that's what we've been seeing.
Yeah. I got one more thing I want to ask you about, and then we'll wrap things up here. And that is something I refer to as metric blur. Because I've found a lot of situations where we're measuring, honestly, probably too many different things. I sat down with the head of sales operations, a company in Dallas. This was about a year and a half ago, I guess. Sat down in his office. He had a huge, one of these 70-inch televisions on the wall. And he said, well, hey, Bill, I want to show you what we're tracking right now across the sales team. And he brought up a spreadsheet that even on a 70-inch television, I could barely read it. It was so tiny. And there was, there must have been at least 40 things on there that were being measured. Now, there's probably nothing wrong with extracting data from a Salesforce.com or other systems to actually look to have that data. But to expect that a leader, or much less the salesperson themselves, can actually digest and synthesize 40 different metrics and do anything about it seems a little extreme. So from your seat, leading the sales team, if I'm working for you, what do you want me to think about the next 30 days? What are the 2 or 3 things you really want me to focus on in terms of really driving? Yeah.
So the ultimate success is closing a deal.
Okay, right.
What are the precursors to that success?
Right.
And so, and let's keep it simple. It's, can we get a meeting?
Right.
Once we have the meeting, are we articulating our value prop in a way that is understood, is compelling? Will they spend time with us to tell us what they need?
Okay, right? So a discovery call.
Discovery call, needs assessment. Based on that, in the pipeline and move through to a close. Yeah. There's a lot of details along the way for sure, but in terms of the macro view, those are the most important factors. Yeah. And so whether you're 30 days in, 90 days, or 5 years, those are fairly basic tenets that are the underpinnings of what you're doing as a seller and as a sales team. Yeah. And there is that the point of diminishing return, I think, in terms of just volume of data points. Yeah. And the diminishing return is, what do you do with all of that to optimize the team? Yeah. Is it helpful? Is it detrimental?
Yeah.
Less is more in a lot of respects. And I think as long as you're focused on those sort of core key aspects of what delivers a sale.
Yeah, what closes a deal, yeah.
Then you should be good.
Yeah, that's right. I think I made a list one time of there are only really 7 activities. If you break it down and kind of group them together, only 7 kinds of actions that we take that truly drive business. And then, of course, there's the conversion from one to the next.
Right.
That's what I would think a salesperson would want them focused on day to day.
Yeah.
Is booking appointments, but turning as many of those appointments as possible into a discovery. Conducting discovery meetings, but turning as many of those as possible as a qualified deal in the pipeline, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So there's lots of other things we could be tracking at a leadership level to decide how we're going to coach and how we're going to train and how we're going to rejigger our territories or reformat the way that we compensate, et cetera. But day to day for a salesperson, it's those key metrics and then the conversion on those, it seems to me. Yeah. Mark, thanks a lot for coming on the show. I appreciate you. So good to see you after all these years.
Well, thank you. It's great to see you.
You're so welcome.